Ever since I moved out of my parents' house, I've toted around this container of memories. Maybe you have something like this. It probably is a little cleaner than this one, but I've always had it with me. In it, there are many different things, not just pictures. I have notes. I have picture books. I have this picture book I made of my cats several years ago. I have a cloth here that stitched on "We Will Miss You" from a student, one of my youth from about 17, 18 years ago. And of course, a collection of pictures as well. One of the things I have in here is a favorite recipes from the family of Jessie Shiroma, which was my grandmother. And in here, there's a couple recipes of mine. Just note, my recipes are not very precise. Just says, put this in if you like it. If not, leave it out. That's kind of how my recipes go. But I learned that from my grandmother. She was the matriarch of the family. She was the centerpiece, really the only grandparent I knew. And I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time with her during the years that my family lived in Hawaii with her. And of course, every summer growing up until I was an adult, I spent in Hawaii with her. So I watched her. She's the one who let me find my foundation in Jesus. And she also showed me how to express love for the people around me through cooking. And so that's one thing I always remember about her, part of my container of memories. One of the things that happens, it's not just things that we see that call back memories. It's all of our senses that can bring back memories. A song can take us back, right, to being 13 years old and in love with someone in our class, right? Of course, it smells. I still remember the smells of my grandma cooking and the smell of her oil of Olay moisturizer. These things are ingrained in my memory. They take me back to a time and a place and to a person, part of my container of memories. I hadn't opened this container for over a decade, and I opened it up, and I began to look through some of the photos. And as I looked through the photos and had all these flashbacks, all these things, these experiences, these people from my life, I felt overwhelmed and flooded with emotion. And my eyes began to well up with tears, and tears started rolling down my face. Because I realized I had forgotten so many things and so many people that helped me come to where I am today. But the thing is, not all memories are good. Some memories we repress because they can bring back trauma, pain, or any suffering that happened in our past. We don't want to remember them because sometimes when we think about those things, we see them or we talk about them, it puts us emotionally back in that time and space as well. I have a yearbook here. This is when I was in second grade. And there's a photo of me, which I have for here, I want to show you. This is a photo of me from second grade. All right, there's a couple things you need to know about me. I'm just going to give you one for right now, is that I don't wear hats. I don't wear hats. Like, the only time I wear hats is I'm freezing cold, or if I'm working out in the yard and trying to keep my face out of the sun. But in this particular picture here in second grade, I'm wearing a hat. And here's the story. I went to get my hair cut at a salon that my parents took me to, and the well-meaning lady there decided to buzz cut all of my hair off. Now, no big deal for some of you, but note that up until this point in my life, and there's photo evidence of this around with my family, I had only had the sweetest Asian bowl cut in the world. So that, going to a buzz, was a pretty traumatic experience for me as an 8-year-old. So I was quite embarrassed and felt quite ashamed of this change. I didn't like the way it looked. It felt different, and it's a big deal for me as a sensitive child. And so when I went to school, I covered my head with this strange white terry cloth bucket hat, sometimes with a hood. The problem is we weren't allowed to wear hats in class in school. So it was clear that something was up. On the playground, I'd have students, of course, see what's going on, sneak up behind me, yank the cap off, and laugh, running away. And I remember walking down the sidewalk to my class one morning, and the vice principal walked up next to me and said, "Sir, you're not supposed to be wearing hats. Can you please take that off?" Now, my second grade teacher, of course, was a little more attuned to what happens with an 8-year-old second grader, and it was much more kind and understood what was going on. But some of my memories from my memory container here. One of the things, though, is even though through that experience, I was surrounded by people who told me and pointed me to who God is and who I was in Christ. And I began to learn, I began to grow and make sure I knew whose I was. I think about the story of Zacchaeus, someone his physical appearance caught attention, and his relationship with his people around him had been broken. But Jesus came, looked at him, and Jesus, this man is a true son of Abraham. He's part of the family. He's a child of God, and he's part of God's kingdom. A key theme in the Bible is the sin. If you're familiar with this, it goes on and on in the Bible, where the story is the people of Israel are at some high point connected with God, obeying him, and they begin to turn away from him. Maybe they see these amazing things happen in the other nations, what they're doing, the amazing things that they have, the power they have, how good they look. They become jealous and want to be a part of that, and they turn away and begin to forget who God is and who he is to them. And so they leave him, and he lets them go, and they often find themselves in trouble. In the book of Isaiah, the people of Israel find themselves taken over by the kingdom or the empire of Assyria. They feel abandoned by God. And the prophet Isaiah speaks to them to remind them of who God is in their trials when they are suffering and crying out for God as if they had been abandoned. He says this in Isaiah chapter 49, verse 14 through 16. Yet Jerusalem says, "The Lord has deserted us. The Lord has forgotten us." Never can a mother forget her nursing child. Can she feel no love for the child she has borne? But even if that were possible, I would not forget you. See, I have written your name on the palms of my hand. Always in my mind is a picture of Jerusalem's walls in ruin. Isaiah reminds the people of Israel that God has absolutely not forgotten them. He never could. Even Abraham, who is the pillar, the father of faith, at times in his early life forgot God or lost trust that God would be faithful. And then he has his son Isaac. God makes this promise happen in miraculous conditions that he has this son Isaac. And he finds himself called now by God to sacrifice this only son, Isaac. And yet at that point in Abraham's life, he had already knew who God was. He already knew that the God who had been faithful in the past was going to be faithful that day and would continue to be faithful in the future. When I was in high school, my pastor had a dream of having youth band. Now, if you ever find yourself at Leone Meadows Camp and you have the opportunity to go into Craig Heinrich's office, the camp director at Leone, you would see this picture. I have a picture here. He had a dream of having a youth praise band. This is in the mid-90s. And this is our youth band. We started off pretty green. We had some raw talent, but we had to get put together. So my youth pastor, Craig, had mentors surround us to help us grow and learn and grow. And this is us a year later leading music at a youth rally. We were able to go lead music at our church. We went to other churches and did music at youth conferences. But do you see me in the picture? Let me show you the next picture here. That guy there, that's not me. Actually, let me show you the next picture. This is where I am in this picture, this next picture. That's me behind the people. I'm playing keyboards back there, right? That's me there. You may never know, but I'm actually in that picture. And this is in Craig's office there at Leona Meadows. I was just chatting with him the other day to get me a copy of this picture. And we did music, and it was one of the greatest joys of my high school life to do that. But luckily, we had a whole community of people that surrounded us to connect us with God and to help us grow in Him. After this year, I graduated and found myself as a music major at PUC. I have the yearbook here. And there are some of you in this congregation right now in this yearbook. Dan Muick. And one of my friends, in fact, the drummer in the picture, had recommended me to help play piano for a church. And this was with all the superstar singers of PUC at the time. These were people who had recorded albums by the time they were in high school. This is the crowd. And I thought I was competent. So I show up Friday afternoon. The group begins to discuss what songs they want to do, what songs I know to play on the piano. And we begin. And I begin playing piano. And it only took a few bars on the piano before one of them said, "Stop. This is not going to work. We're going to need to find someone else to play for piano for us." And that was my opening experience to leading music when I was in college. Now, but here's the thing. I was no noob. I already knew who I was, and I knew of God's faithfulness. This last picture I have for you is a letter. I have it right here. This letter is from Michael Mervine of East Valley Music and Arts. He's the gentleman that is leading that music group in the picture I just showed you. He was a music leader from a church, a Foursquare church in town, that they had brought in to come help mentor us in leading music. And he was like this dude. I don't know how to better describe it. He's like this dude. He was just this big personality that played guitar, and had all this slang that we never understood what he was talking about. He seemed like one of those guys that probably led music at his church every Sunday and was probably gigging in clubs in the evenings. This is one of these guys. But I found this letter recently. I didn't even realize I had it. I had forgotten all about this. And this is a letter he wrote to me. It says this: "Jonny, it was a real joy to work with you at the youth rally the other week. I appreciate your work and talent. The Lord works in many ways. And I hope you were touched during our worship groove." Right? This is this guy. I sure was. In his pocket, Michael. You get a feel for him based on his words, groove and pocket. But this was someone who reminded me of who I was and of God's continued faithfulness. Now, I'm here today to talk to you and remind you this. If you are someone who feels a little lost, if you are someone today that maybe feels a little hopeless, if you feel like maybe you've gone a little off track, I'm here today to tell you this, that the God who is faithful yesterday is faithful today and will remain faithful in the future. That's this God. But I also have a charge for you, church, and alumni of Napa Christian, Napa Junior Academy, Napa Adventist Junior Academy. It's this. Your charge is to introduce new people to Jesus and also be a reminder to each other about God's goodness and faithfulness when we lose our way, our hope begins to fade, or if we forget this: the God who was faithful yesterday is faithful today and will remain faithful tomorrow. It's not just pictures or songs that remind us and help us remember what is essential and most important, but it's also the people in our lives that do that.